Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan B. Butler, and this time we are taking a look at Star Wars, the 16mm print version from 1977. Again, this is all predating any of the Star Wars traditional home video stuff we tend to think of when we think of VHS and Betamax, eventually Laserdisc and DVD and so on. This is stuff that you can actually get the same year that Star Wars was actually in theaters before the first episode ever got named, Episode 4, A New Hope. Now, last time we took a look at the 8mm version from Kin Films. Now, this was the way you were more likely to be able to just buy it and see it in your home. There was somewhat of an alternate way, but it's sort of a gray area when it comes to the ability to purchase this thing. Around the same time that Kin Films was putting out A New Hope on Super 8mm, there were also 16mm prints, as opposed to the 35mm and 70mm prints of the film that were in theaters, that were being put out for places like libraries, prisons, military bases, places where mass viewings might be possible, but which were unlikely to be somehow taking the place of going to a theater to see it. You're not going to take the population of a prison to a theater. If you're having a big charity event or something at a library, that probably wouldn't move to a theater. And military bases, you're not going to have everyone go off base to go to a theater to see it, but you want to do something so the troops can see this amazing film phenomenon. So they put out this 16mm version in a relatively limited release, at least relatively limited in terms of the 8mm stuff that you could buy to watch in your home fairly easily. The 16mm version was not edited down like the 8mm was. It is a full-length cut of the film. But bear in mind that the original release of the film in theaters was in either stereo or mono. And those two soundtracks were different. Subtly, but different. Some of the cuts that people were like, where did that come from in, say, the special editions, right? The difference between you're lucky you don't taste very good and you're lucky you got out of there, and the difference in until I can get the shelter built or until I can get the shelter up. Those slight sound differences we heard that were somewhat jarring after years and years of hearing the same thing from the VHS mixes of them. Well, it's because you had these two different audio versions. And on the 16mm prints, the audio was the mono soundtrack, not the stereo soundtrack, which means there are some subtle differences that I think make this pretty interesting if you're someone who is trying to collect Star Wars on home video. Now, I have not picked up any of the 16mm reels. They're fairly rare and pretty expensive to come across at this point. Plus, I don't have a film player for that. Heck, I don't have a 8mm player for that matter, but it's part of Star Wars history. I might grab it if it happens to come around cheaply, but somehow I doubt that's going to happen. Again, I want to show you some clips to illustrate some of the interesting stuff about this particular sort of home release. I say sort of because, yes, people did buy these, but they got them from the libraries, from the prisons, from the military bases. Sometimes they checked them out from a library and just didn't return them. There are 16mm prints in circulation, but they're just not all that common for the films. Once again, Puggo, Jar Jar's Yoda, a fan who has digitized Star Wars film reels for archival purposes to sort of keep Star Wars' history alive in that sense, has come through on this in a couple of fan projects to capture those 16mm reels. He's working on one for Return of the Jedi right now. He has put out, and again, these are fan-made covers that I downloaded here, with Star Wars, also known as the Puggo Grande edition there down at the bottom, the 16mm film. And for The Empire Strikes Back, we have Puggo Strikes Back. They are digitizations available online. You just kind of have to hunt for them. They're not distributed through a particular website as a download for various reasons, but you can find these, and they make for a great chance to see the 16mm version of Star Wars for those who didn't get a chance back in the 70s, like I didn't. First, let's take a look at how the 16mm version of A New Hope launches. That's right. This edition, the 16mm version, doesn't have an opening narration like the 8mm did, but it also does not have the Episode 4 A New Hope on it because they didn't know they were going to need the subtitle yet. The Empire Strikes Back had not come out in 1980 at this point. Now, they will tell you that the version of A New Hope that you can find in this, or in this, or in this, right? They will tell you that that is the original, unaltered edition of the film. And that is bull. It's not. What they did was they took an early Laserdisc version of the film, and we'll actually look at it at one point, the definitive collection. They took an early Laserdisc version and used that as the master for the unaltered version, which meant it had different sound, though not by much, than the original did, because that was a new sound mix for that version on Laserdisc. They then spliced in at least a couple of points from old, really good 70mm film reels. The opening of A New Hope without the A New Hope on it, and I'm pretty sure, unless they just changed the audio, they did it with the C-3PO line that's missing on that one like it was missing in the stereo mix. We're going to take a look at that when we look at the VHS releases here in the near future. But that original is not really the original, and even in that original, you can't get the mono soundtrack. It is a fairly rare thing. That said, let's take a look at some of the things that are affected, two primary examples, by the fact that we are dealing with a mono sound mix. This might feel weird because we're so used to the stereo mix, but bear with me, I think this deserves a look. First, let's take a look at Aunt Beru. Aunt Beru's dialogue was recorded multiple times. There's a point at which she had recorded the dialogue once, and then she was called back in to please re-record the dialogue. It's Miss Fraser who played Aunt Beru, back before she was Beru Whiteson, we just knew her as Beru Lars. And what wound up happening was that the stereo mix, the Dolby stereo mix, had one version of the lines, but the mono mix had a different version of the lines. Same lines in general, different take by Miss Fraser, sounding different, of course, to our ears that are so used to her regular takes, as we would call them, from the stereo mix. Here's an example of the original line, the way we think of it in stereo, from Beru, followed by the mono example.
Have you seen Luke this morning?
He said he had some things to do before he started today, so he left early.
Oh, did he take those 2 new droids with him?
I think so.
Well, he better have those units in the South Range repaired by midday, or there'll be hell to pay.
And the mono example?
Have you seen Luke this morning?
He said he had some things to do before he started today, so he left early.
Oh, did he take those 2 new droids with him?
I think so.
Well, he better have those units in the South Range repaired by midday, or there'll be hell to pay.
Now that doesn't change anything with the scene, it just makes her sound a little different than what we're perhaps used to. But there is one point where it really kind of changes what's happening in the scene. You may recall there's a point in the Battle of Yavin where Luke has TIE fighters on his butt, and he needs help, and Wedge is saying he's on the way to help. But then when Luke is being bared down upon, his response is, "Blasted Biggs, where are you?" Right? It looks like this.
I'm hit, but not bad. R2, see what you can do with it. Hang on back there. Red 6, can you see Red 5? There's a heavy fire zone on this. Red 5, where are you? I can't shake him. I'm on him, Luke. Hold on. Blasted Biggs, where are you? Thanks, Wedge. Shooting, Wedge.
That's what we're all used to. And the thought process, at least that I've always gone through, is that, granted, it's not Biggs that's on his way to help. But Biggs is his friend. Biggs is the one he counts on. Had counted on when he was younger, now he intends to count on now that he's with the Rebel Alliance. And the fact that Biggs, of all people, can't save him is hurtful to Luke somehow. It's frustrating to Luke. So it's not, "Where are you?" to the person coming to rescue him. It's, "Where are you, Biggs? I thought you had my back on this," right? It's more of a frustration of his life situation than it is specifically about that moment and the TIE fighter on his butt. Or so it's made to seem by the stereo audio track. Here's what it is in mono.
bad. R2, see what you can do with it. Hang on back there. Red 6, can you see Red 5? There's a heavy fire zone on this side. Red 5, where are you? I can't shake it. I'm on him, Luke. Hold on. Blasted Wedge, where are you? Thanks, Wedge. Good shooting, Wedge.
That's right. From a situational standpoint, the mono mix gets it right, the stereo mix gets it wrong, and we have to essentially retcon what's going on in Luke's head to make up for the fact that it's not really Biggs coming to his rescue, it's Wedge. Nicely done, mono track. It's too bad no future edits ever took you into consideration. Overall, it is pretty cool to see that, yes, Star Wars was out there outside of theaters as early as 1977, albeit in a fairly limited release format, and I have to say I'm at least somewhat envious of some of those collectors out there, like some of the film bigwigs and some of the really, really early home video collectors with those 16mm projectors who've gotten their hands on some of these. But that will wrap up our look at the different film strip style versions. Again, if you want to see those online, Puggo Jar Jar's Yoda is the name of the person who has put together those great fan archival versions of them. You can also find some clips of them, including preview clips of those, on places like YouTube and whatnot. We're going to take a look at the VHS releases starting in our very next episode with what we usually think is the first Star Wars home video release, but now, thanks to the last couple episodes of this series, hopefully you recognize was not. But hey, it's the first we can put into VCR or a Betamax player, so yeah, close enough. For some, right? We're going to try to be a little bit more specific here. With that, we wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.